V-Gates, guys and gals. Hey, part two of our picking army for our board out here. We're going to go with Red Bear, Big Red Bear book. Great book, obviously directed at Soviets, Eastern Front. And we have our Big Bad IS-2 on the back cover here. So basically what I ended up going with here is a Russian or Soviet Tankovy battalion. Okay, I already got my list printed up. It's out of the Red Bear, of course, and it's on the Army Builder program I was showing you last video. We'll go step by step over this, but basically ended up with what we call a heavy guards tank company. So, you know, this is something that my son will like to play. I'm doing basically like a test battle. I got some step-by-step or turn-by-turn vids I'm going to throw up after this, and it'll show you basically the King Tigers are just unstoppable. I mean, I did the first turn, and the King Tigers have already taken out, you know, 2 tanks like this. Well, actually it took out 1 tank destroyer, and our artillery took out another tank. But we're gonna play the battle out. I really think that the Soviets at this point are gonna have to do some serious flanking maneuvers. But we'll see. The King Tigers, if I ever do that heavy tank company with like 4 platoons of King Tigers, they're gonna be like unstoppable. It'll be like 5,000 points. I'll end up just having King Tigers and maybe some artillery or something to throw smoke. Now, the thing I'll have to say for the Soviets, and one of the changes I would already like to make to this list that I built would be I got some anti-tank guns in here. They're called ZIS-3s, ZIS-3s, and I would probably swap those out for some regular artillery. In the ZIS-3s, see, they don't throw smoke. So since the Soviets don't have any ability to throw smoke, you know, the King Tigers are probably going to rape them. So you'll find there's several videos out there with tactics to use against King Tigers, and one of the first ones that's espoused is throwing smoke against King Tigers, right, to get them to move and to be able to flank them, because you throw a bunch of smoke onto their position, and if they move, they don't have that rate of fire 2 anymore. That's what kills the Soviets. The Soviets have that rate of fire of 1, right? And if they move, you know, there's Hen and Chicks. Now, we're not really playing that too well. It's let's see, Hen and Chicks is really affecting the SU-152s, and the Hen and Chicks is affecting the ISU-122s. Now, it turns out the ISU-122 is better than the SU-152. You think that wouldn't be the same, because it's basically espousing that 122 millimeter gun versus 152 millimeter gun. But if you look at the anti-tank rating of the ISU, it's a 15 anti-tank, which is just as good as a punch as the IS-2 gun on the IS-2 tank. And the SU-152 has a 13 anti-tank. So it must have to do with the velocity of the muzzle fire, or the muzzle velocity. So the other thing to point out as I was building this Soviet list was, just like the King Tiger, the IS-2s and the ISU-122s and the SU-152s are termed slow tanks, which means the maximum movement is 8 inches. Okay, so that's a big factor. I would say I might want to put in, we'll play out this list and see how it works, and then we'll run another video with tweaking the list against the Germans. This German list that I have out there on that board it's pretty it's pretty wicked. Okay, but keep in mind, on this board, the objective is to seize the German headquarters, not to necessarily win by attrition by taking out other tanks. It is simply to take the headquarters. So you focus on your mission. You may lose a lot of tanks as the Soviets move up. They may lose a lot of tanks, but as long as they seize that headquarters for one turn, Germans lose. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll show you a play-by-play after this video. I'll show you a couple clips of the first couple turns, and then I'll do another video where I'll show each successive turn bit by bit as the battle unfolds, and see how it ends up turning out. So, but this whole exercise is really list building, tweaking lists. The only way you tweak lists is by playing out the list and seeing, hey, I need this or I don't need that, and you kind of work your way through it. So we'll get the book open here, and I'll show you. We've got the Tankovoy, right? The Tankovoy, and we'll run down basically what I ended up putting on this list. We got the company headquarters, which we substituted, let's see, IS-2s. We had one IS-2 as the company HQ. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3 platoons of 5 IS-2s per platoon. So there's 16 IS-2s on the board out there. Okay, that's a lot of firepower. The other thing I thought was interesting as I was working my way through this list was that the IS-2 is deemed a defensive tank, right? More than likely probably because it is slow. Okay, it's hard to stay ahead of the troops because it's so slow. In this battle, they're basically being used more as an offensive tank. Like I said before, I'd probably scatter in another platoon of T-34s for more of a fast assault. You know, if you're going after an objective, possibly doing, you know, like substituting in tank riders, something like that maybe. So yeah, 3 platoons of IS-2s. We got the ISU 122s. We got 2 platoons of those with 3 tanks or 3 destroyers each. All right, and then we got 2 SU 152s in 1 platoon. So there's 8 tank destroyers. Then you run into the ZIS-3 guns. We got 4 of those. Those are anti-tank. You can think of them like like the PaK-40. It was a lot bigger gun. It's actually more effective. The anti-tank rating of the ZIS-3 is 9, so it's not going to do anything against a King Tiger. Okay, maybe a Panther, right? You might have a slim chance of taking out a Panther. So once I really started, after I had selected, I'm thinking I'd use those to protect the headquarters, and I really started looking at the anti-tank rating. You know, they're pretty worthless. So yeah, I mean, yeah. See, they can't even fire bombardments. Okay. And then I got a big well, it's 1 platoon. It's a huge Moto-Streckovoy company, which is a company of infantry that rides on trucks. You know, they obviously didn't have the fancy half tracks unless they were captured half tracks from the Germans. They just use your standard utility truck, and we'll do a cutaway here in the next scene. I'll actually do a flyby of the Soviet Army. You'll see the trucks, they just scrummage up to throw these guys on. Their job is to ride in behind the tanks and seize the objective. Okay, so there's quite a few of those. There's actually 7 rifle MG teams. Per platoon, and there's 2 of those. So we got 6 trucks carrying a total of 14, you know, stands of rifle MG teams. So that's a nice sizable little force of infantry rushing in They can also do tank assaults and stuff like that. So they, you know, I'm not going to discount the Soviet list yet. That is a pretty decent list, but I would definitely swap the Zis-3s out for artillery so that they can throw smoke. That was a big blunder on my part. If I were taking this list to a more real competitive game, and again, this has worked out to be, you know, I started, oh, to be 2,500 points, you know, 2,000 points. It ended up really quickly escalating into like a 4,300 point lists. I even went above 4,000 because I got to 4,000. I'm like, I really want to take this. I'd really like to take this. What the heck, you know, let's go up to like 43. We'll bump it up to 4,300. You know, people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. But when you see, it's actually for a 6x6 board, it's still a very manageable game. On you know, one general versus another general. So especially when you're getting these IS-2s and these King Tigers, I mean, they're so expensive to get them on the list, so it ends up, you know, eating up points really quick. So you got to look at that factor too. So yeah, I guess one of the things I want to make a video on too with that in mind is doing a 1750 point strict, you know, tournament list. And that, boy, that would be really hard for me because I'm so used to just, you know, doing these ridiculous lists, these ridiculous battles with these huge, you know, 5,000-6,000 point battles, and and you think carving it down to just 1750, and what would you really take? You know, that would be really tough. You know, now you're only looking at just a handful of tanks, some infantry, some artillery, and then you're basically going to be out the points. So, but it, you know, I got to be looking at that. If I'm going to be going to a tournament, I really got to think about paring a list down to something that's very strategic, just a very small crack unit, and you know, and then kicking it from there. But anyways, that's the Soviet list, guys. Pick up the Red Bear book if you want to delve into Soviets. This is almost a must. And they're so much fun to play. The Soviets have so much depth, and you know, Americans are fine. I got my Americans. It's really tough unless you put Americans in a defensive posture, which what I did in one of my last battles we played. You know, the Germans just could not bust through the Americans' lines. But in terms of a offensive list for Americans, it's really tough to win with them. You really have to be crafty, and using smoke. And that's, you know, watching Fury, the movie Fury, and watching how they use the smoke against the Tiger. You know, I'm like, well, I've got to start bringing smoke into the game, because for so long we've played on almost 5 years we've been playing, we really never really played smoke much. So we're throwing that into this game. I've quickly realized that is an essential part of playing this game. You've got to have smoke. It's it really stunned me what a difference it makes in the tactics and the things you can do with it. So if you haven't been playing smoke in your games, get out the book, look it up. It's really not hard. It just takes a bag of cotton balls. I thought, well, it's going to be too confusing and it's going to end up cluttering up the game, and then there'll be a bunch of arguing over, you know, where the smoke lands and how it drifts and this and that. But it really isn't hard. It's pretty straightforward, and it'll make a huge difference in the tactics you use. So with that in mind, we'll cut to these clips. I also will show you a little quick clip of my Reichsguard Knights, which I just finished up. They really turned out great. So now I'm getting started on my Empire State Gunners, and then the Spearmen. And we'll be close to getting the heart of my Empire Armory done. Okay guys, I'm going to show you the final pre-deployment setup here on our battlefield somewhere in the Ukraine. And here is my King Tigers. We've got 4 King Tigers forming one platoon. You can see the great view you here have at the eye level. So
So we're going to come up, we're going to review the Panthers. So I've got 2 platoons of Panthers, 3 tanks per platoon, and then that is technically the HQ. Okay. And we're going to come over here. This is my armored half tracks, and they are carrying Fallschirmjägers. I added a few extra points. The point value came out at 4,000 points per army. And I'm going to show you also how the Germans up against the Soviets always have less equipment, although the German equipment is always better. Here are my Nebelwerfers. They're a rocket battery. They're going to be throwing down some smoke bombardments for me. And the guy in the killer chopper with the sidecar, he is the spotter for the Nebelwerfers. Alright. Then we're going to come over here. I did do some touch-ups on my, let me turn him around so I can get a good view of him. You'll see my other video leading up to this that I had purchased these as part of a used army that I purchased when I first got into the game, and they had never really been touched up properly, but you can see I went in and added some equipment to the top, and I also weathered the tanks, or the tank destroyers, and added a tank commander in this guy. And I gave them their markings, unit markings. So I'm looking forward to using these. I love these elephants. They're great for sitting back in positions like this and sitting down range and just picking off enemy tanks. And then the final unit I have as part of the Germans is 152 millimeter howitzers to lay down some artillery barrages. And they're good for hitting the anti-tank for the top of the armor. And we have a little Kubelwagen, which is the spotter for the team. And we have our HQ right there. Again, this is non-deployed. I'm probably going to park the HQ behind this wood section here. And then I'll have to work out how the deployment goes. I'll come over here to the Soviets. And you can see the Soviets have a lot more on the board. So we have our 5 IS-2s. We got some 152s, anti-tank, and the ISU, where are they? ISU 122s, tank destroyers. We got 3 of those. There's our HQ, right? There's the main HQ, which is actually a great model. Comes as almost like a little diorama. And we have 5 IS-2s, 5 IS-2s, and with the HQ, I'm up against 16 IS-2s right off the start, and 3, 4, 5 tank destroyers. No, I'm wrong. There's another 3 ISU 122s. So I'm up against 8 tank destroyers. We're also bringing in some Soviet artillery. Those, I believe, are ZIS 3s. We're also bringing in some infantry. They'll be riding in these trucks, Soviet pickup trucks. And we got 3 Soviet pickup trucks, and the Soviets had to scrounge up a artillery transport truck to carry the rest of the troops. And I've conveniently parked them back here for when they go into action. As you can see, those trucks are, each truck is carrying 2 units, and it's going to be interesting. So here's a Soviet view looking back at the German lines. So that's what we're looking at, guys. It's going to be a great battle. The Germans are definitely outgunned, but that's how it goes. Here is my Fallschirmjägers. You can see I did them in like an orangish, a German orange trim to designate their Fallschirmjäger unit. You'll see the, gotta keep it as steady as I can. You can see the camo, and you see the different types of helmets that the Fallschirmjägers had. And we will hope that at some point during the battle, the Fallschirmjägers will go downfield and will seize the Soviet headquarters. Alright, we got our initial deployment done and the first move done. You can see here we've got the left flank of the German line is being covered down this way by the Elephants. We've got our Fallschirmjägers here, got our artillery battery is getting ready to fire. We got our spotting team up here that is up on the hill. He's going to spot those. There's some ISU 122s and some 152s down there, and we got a platoon of IS-2s moving up. Now keep in mind the IS-2s are a slow tank. They can only move 8 inches a turn, as well as the King Tigers, which I have positioned here behind this hedgerow. Okay, so I got a 3-tank platoon of Panthers moving up the middle, taking position. We have the German High Command, which is the Russian or Soviet objective. So you have their field car and you have the command team marked by an objective marker. And let's move over this way. We've got some Fallschirmjägers camping out behind this hill, seeing if they can possibly rush down and take the Russian or Soviet objective. It's peeking out behind there in the red, but that's going to be tough because we'll show you here in a minute as I go around to the Soviet side. So this will show you some of the initial deployment, especially for you new players. The Soviets lost the first roll, so the Soviets had to set up first, so the Germans got the key off of their setup. We have the other platoon of Panthers taking up position here on the right flank just to cover as a right flank guard. And this is the command team or the headquarters team, which is the backup tank brigade. And there's my Nebelwerfers that are going to provide some smoke cover. So, oh, and there's the spotting team for the Nebelwerfers. He's headed down to make a spot for the artillery team. So to let you in on my German plan, I pretty much stacked up most of my strength on the left side. So as you can see, the objective is kind of on the left side. So my idea was to basically sweep this left flank, stabilize the middle, okay, stabilize the middle, and stabilize the right flank. Now keep in mind, as the left flank moves forward to seize the objective, the middle and the right flank can always shift to the left to reinforce the left flank advance. Alright, so let's go ahead on the Russian side. We got our platoon of IS-2s moving up the left flank in a offensive posture. Again, they can only move 8 inches a turn, but they are a good tough tank. We've got a 3 truck platoon here of Russian infantry that's following them. So the Russian plan at this point is looking like we got some 152s, we got some 122s taking up this hedgerow. Those are anti-tank guns, and some infantry following up the IS-2s to see if they could possibly break through the left flank and seize the German objective. we have a platoon of IS-2s moving up the middle. We have some 122s defending and reinforcing the middle behind this hill. You can see how I kind of terrace the hills, that way you can put units on the hills. It's easier that way. I do them in layers, so that's why that's like that. It's not a ancient Inca pyramid or anything. I do that for a reason. We got another IS-2 platoon moving up the right flank. It's going to be interesting to see how that turns out, because they're running headlong into hell. Elephants and King Tigers. So the Soviet plan is obviously to reinforce their headquarters. They have some anti-tank ZIS-3s positioned behind the hedgerow. Great position for them. We have the headquarters tank, which is acting as a reinforcement brigade, and we're keeping a 3-truck unit or platoon of infantry in reserve. Just hopefully rush down and get the objective. So that's kind of how the first move is going, and I'll come back, we'll cut back and see how the first German, now the Germans just basically watched the Soviets move, the Soviets just moved, so now we're going to be doing some retaliatory fire from the Germans, because the Germans have a 40-inch range. Alright, play-by-play. The Soviets moved, the Germans did their first fire at this Su-152 down there. The 3 of the King Tigers fired at this one that was in the open, took him out. The command tank from the King Tiger platoon fired at the other one positioned behind the hill and missed. Again, they get 2 shots because they were stationary, and they got a 40-inch range. Then our spotting for the 152 millimeter howitzers, fired a barrage downrange at some IS-2s. He honed in on his target the first time, and he ended up taking out 2 IS-2s. So the IS-2 platoon here has already been cut down to size. So you can see if the Germans get some good rolls, they can really put the hurting on the Soviets. We laid down some smoke. 2 smoke puffs down here from our batteries. At least it's going to block the line of sight for a couple of the tanks, more than likely. So after the next turn, those smoke markers will go away, but they will be there for the start of the Soviet moving and firing range. Now the Soviets could move through that smoke, so they do have that option. They could simply just move past that smoke and still shoot, right? But it adds another element to the game, introducing smoke into the game. And we're just using just simple cotton balls. You get them at a drugstore for a couple bucks, and that's what we're using. Alright, on to the Soviet turn. I'll let you see the results of what the Soviets do.